Please welcome to the TEDx Hood College stage, Dr. Sean Wolf.
You and I have something very valuable in common. You see, I identify in my own being as a learner. When I think about who Sean is, when I ask myself, who is Sean? I answer, I'm a learner. And that's what drives how I kind of go through my life, through my days. You've invested some incredible time here tonight, all with hopes of learning something. My goal is to make sure that you receive something awesome here. I'm going to tell you 3 conversations. And those 3 conversations, I'll call them transformative, because my title of this talk is Be Transformative. There are 3 transformative conversations. And out of those 3 conversations, I'm going to give you 3 critical principles for being transformative. In 1990, I had probably the most impactful conversation of my life. A conversation that took my life down an entirely different path than what it was on at the time. I had taken a management position at Eastern College, Eastern University in St. David's, Pennsylvania. It wasn't my first management position, but it was a very early management position for me. And I loved the school. I enjoyed getting to know all about the school in the interview process. And I had met Dr. Harold Howard, the provost of the university, in my interview process. I didn't report directly to him, but I came to know him a little bit during the interview process. Well, he asked me if I would be open to a mentoring relationship. That was quite an honor. And so I said, of course, I would love that. I would love to be mentored by someone like you. So we made our plan. And the initial plan was for me to meet him at the library at the college. Now, we were going to meet about 7:30 in the morning, and the library opened at 8, so we're meeting before the library opens. I get there early, partially because I'm excited and partially because I just don't know where I'm going yet. I'm brand new to the school. So I arrive, and the doors are locked. So I'm looking around, and I figured Harold will be here soon. And I hear noise from inside the library. He's come to the door from inside the library. He unlocks the door, lets me in, relocks the door, and I follow him through the stacks of books. And we come to a door. He opens the door, we go down some stairs, I follow him down the stairs. He opens another door, we have this long hallway. So we're in the basement of the library. There's nobody else there. You can picture the feel of that, right? It's a really cool, hollow feeling. Like we're in this really cool place. We're all alone, and I'm with the provost. So we walk down this long hall, and he opens the door into the room. And I notice as I walk in the room, above the door, it says the Rare Books Room. How neat is that? The Rare Books Room. So I didn't know, so I asked, what's the deal with the Rare Books Room? And he described the Rare Books Room as this place where we had incredible books of great value that would never be allowed to leave the room. And so you can imagine there are a lot of old books there. Anybody can kind of guess at what the smell of old books might be, right? So it's a bit musty. And I look into the room, and there's this long table. So it's like a boardroom table. And at the other end, they're like those old, you've seen movies where the lawyers are sitting around these little desks areas in a big room where it's kind of dark, and they've got their little lamp. Well, there's a little lamp down there, and there's Harold's stuff. He has 3 or 4 notepads open. They're all folded over. He's got his notes in there. Clearly, he's been here a while. He's got his coffee mug there, and he's got his coffee in there, which is 3/4 of the way gone. So clearly, he's been there a while. And so I take note. Incredible leader. He gets up early. He shows up to the school early, and he's got his work he's already going on. So we sit down. We have a very nice conversation, and I'm learning about what he's expecting from me at the university, what our department is expected to do, and the roles and relationships and the departments that I should be connecting with. And I'm enjoying this conversation. And then he turns to me with this somewhat serious look. And he said, Sean, I want to tell you something that's critical about being a manager here at this university. We don't get work done through people. We develop people through the work. That took me a bit surprised. We don't get work done through people. We develop people through our work. Changed my life, like momentarily, and then it changed my life through the next 20 years. I had become, in that moment, somebody who went from, I'm trying to build a career, to someone who said, I need to be the kind of person that knows how to develop other people. I want to be that person. I want to be like Harold. I want to be the kind of person who develops others. So 20 years later, I've gone from, actually I'll step back. So I was not always a learner. In high school, I was B-ish kind of student. College, I was also maybe a B-ish kind of student. And it wasn't about the grades. It was the lack of my desire to learn, the lack of drive to learn. I could work hard and get grades, but I wasn't learning a whole lot. Harold taught me to want to learn and to be a learner. And so what started to happen for me was I drove into learning. I started a master's degree in nonprofit management, completed that there at Eastern. Then I went on and completed a doctorate in strategic leadership. And the entire time I was learning how to become a development person, somebody who develops other people. And so I'm going to tell you about this mindset. So that conversation brought me into the first principle of being a transformative person, and that is to have the mindset that I call generative. It's a mindset that is focused on the growth and development of other people. And I call it generative. It's this sense of giving to, being a part of, adding to, making sure that you are being there to help that person become what they become, being generative. In my early 40s, I was part of a group of guys. We were in a men's group studying books together, learning, growing, developing each other, holding each other accountable. There were 6 of us, and it was a great group. I enjoyed our time together, and we had just been gotten to the point where we're finishing up this really challenging book, and we said, hey, let's do a weekend retreat. So we decided to go to a cabin up in northern Pennsylvania, out in the woods, and we do typical things you would do, a bunch of guys hanging out in the woods. We were finishing our books, so we were doing some of our own reading. We were having campfires, we were doing hikes and all of that. Second night, we decided we're going to have a campfire, we're going to do our culminating conversation around this incredible book. And as we have our conversation, we reach a point where we're like, so what? Great book, really big challenges. What are we going to do about this? What big challenge are we going to give ourselves now? And so we decided we're going to run a marathon. I mean, why not, right? None of us had ever run a marathon. And it seemed like a good idea at 11 o'clock at night after we had been breathing in smoke from the fire for 3 or 4 hours. So we decided to run a marathon. So here's what we did. We said, how do we do this? We don't really have a method to do this. And I happened to be in manufacturing at the time. So I started talking to them about this thing we called creative tension. I read it in a book 30 years ago, Peter Senge's book, The Fifth Discipline, fabulous book. And in his book, he talks about this thing called creative tension. Now, I'll use my rubber band here to give you a sense. Now, that's tension, right? So what we had to do is we had to determine what our current state is. So if this is my current state, my current state then was to run a mile. I could run 1 mile. And in 9 months, I had to be able to run 26.2 miles. That's a lot of tension, right? That's a lot of tension there. And so we had to ask ourselves, where are we? And so I'm going to put some posts here. You're going to image with me, would you? Here's a post of current state. And let's call all of our current state 1 mile. And all the way over here is our future state, 26.2 miles. So what I knew from the research, as well as from some of the manufacturing work we had done, is that the scale happens when you understand both the current state and the future state. But what I know from human growth and development is that we have to come over here and we have to create this future state in an incredible way. So we would come here to the future state and we would say, what's it going to feel like when you run across that line? When you can say, I ran a marathon, what is it going to feel like when you come across that line? And all of those people are cheering. How are you going to feel? What's it going to look like? And go there, right? So we want to create this future state to be what we call compelling. Create a compelling future. If you can create a compelling future, that compelling future will help you do a very powerful thing, and that is pull you to it. When you pull to something as opposed to push to something, there's power there, and a compelling future will pull you. However, I will tell you that this scale is tough. I can run 1 mile now, and you want me to run 26.2. I can't really feel it there, right? So what we would say is, let's put a couple more posts in here. And the first one might be 5 miles. Let's have a goal to run 5 miles in 1 month. And so we get there, and we get to that 5 mile mark, and here's what you do when you get to your first post. I call this a discovery point. You get to your discovery point, and you pause, and you celebrate, and you say, wow, I am someone different. I no longer am the person who can run 1 mile. I'm the person who can run 5 miles. And I pause and I look back. And here's the value. You want to look back. You want to measure back. Because when you measure back, you get excited about the progress that you've made. See, the two very important parts of this part of understanding being transformative. We want to help people make progress. We want to help people understand how that progress happens. And we want to help them celebrate the progress. The second piece is we need to help them have an understanding of a sense of belonging. We want to have a sense of belonging. So for us, there were 6 of us together running together and learning how to do this together and experiencing it together. In a management position or in a leadership position, you have to find another way to make sure there's a sense of belonging. When there's a sense of belonging and a true sense of ability to see progress, magic can happen. So if I pause and I say, okay, here we got to the 5 mile, that's pretty cool. Now I can run 5. Well, then we make it to 10, maybe 12. Magic happened for me at the 18-mile mark. So these are all discovery points that I've described. The 18-mile mark for me was a breakthrough point. And when we're managing people and we help them make this kind of progress, watch for the breakthrough point. Because the breakthrough point is where they change their identity. I'm no longer somebody who's trying to run a marathon. I'm no longer training for a marathon. I'm now a runner. At 18 miles, I declared I was a runner. I am now a runner. That's what we want to look for in this methodology. So what I'm describing is a method. So we had the mindset of being transformative. That's the generative mindset. I'm declaring a method of being transformative. Us helping other people, engaging other people. It's a relationship work that we do. And we help them by helping them understand their current state, understand their future state, and understand how to make those markers along the way correctly, understanding how to look back and understand progress. The last conversation happened when I was in my doctoral program. So I was working through my program with a cohort of 50 people. We were all from many different states, as well as a handful from other countries. And so we're sitting around the conference room in our second residency during our program, and we're wrestling with the big question, right? Our degree is strategic leadership. What is the core relationship that a leader has with his or her followers? And what is the relationship the followers have with the leader? And what's going on there? How do we manage that? How do we develop that? How do we grow that? How do we invest there? And we were having a wonderful conversation about what we've seen. We were sharing stories and all of that. And one of my classmates, who happened to be from Africa, and said, oh, I know what you're talking about, Ubuntu. And we, of course, none of us know Zulu, so none of us knew what that meant. And he said, in my community, Ubuntu means I am who I am because of who you are. I am who I am because of who you are. I've kind of replayed with the words a little bit, and I describe it now. I've become who I am. I've become who I become because of how you have been with me. I contend that we can be those kind of managers, those kinds of leaders, those kinds of friends that can be such an influence in somebody's life that they say, I am who I am because of who you are. One last story. On my father's 70th birthday, my family decided we're going to host a party, 70th birthday party. Now, my father was a very successful wrestling coach in high school, and he had a long career, 20 years of active head coach, and then a handful of years as an assistant coach. Many state champions, and we were in Pennsylvania. Wrestling's pretty serious up in Pennsylvania. He had a lot of people who loved him. And so we invited everybody we could think of, particularly around the wrestling community. We had so many people respond that we had to have the party in the cafeteria in our high school. I was amazed. I knew some of these stories. I grew up watching my father do this sport. I grew up wrestling for him. I loved what I got to see. I did not know the depth until that day. On his 70th birthday, hundreds of people showed up, people who had wrestled for him 30 years ago, and they told story after story after story about the impact that he had on their lives, how he transformed their lives. He was a transformative leader. He was a transformative person. He cared so much about them. On my father's 9 years later, I delivered my father's eulogy. It was a great honor to do that. I shared this story, the Ubuntu story, at my father's eulogy. And I declared then and there, I am who I am because of who he was. Thank you.
Well, that brings us